everybody, it's Imogen and welcome back to Colouring Kid. I hope you're doing well and welcome to this new video. So, in today's video I'm going to be sharing what pencils I use on specific papers, and this was a suggestion by Corbury123, so thank you so much for the suggestion because I thought it was a really good idea. There are some books that I only use specific pencils in just because I like the paper for certain pencils, so I think this is a really great way to share what pencils I like to use. So I'm going to get started. So I haven't coloured in this Create Space paper book yet, however I have the Wishes and Wings and Wondrous Things by Corey Dantini, and although this isn't Create Space paper, I think it's FSC, and I don't think that is, because in the Create Space paper books it says printed in the USA, and also this is an Amazon printing. So these papers are very similar, and as I said, although I haven't coloured in Manic Botanic, I have coloured in Wishes and Wings and Wondrous Things. So I think the most popular medium that people use in Create Space paper books is probably marker, or at least putting a base of marker and then going over with pencil. So that's what I do as well. And then any pencils that I use, I will typically use my more budget-friendly pencils, so my Faber-Castell Classics or my Crayolas and things like that. So I have done a bit of shading on this one with pencil. You may not be able to see very well, but this is mainly markers and gel pens. So I would say personally, for me, I like slightly harder pencils because sometimes with Create Space paper it can be quite toothy, so it really pushes down the tooth and has less white space. So that's kind of what I like to use in books that have similar paper to Create Space paper. So the next one I thought was a good one to mention because I have quite a few books with paperback paper. So as I mentioned many times, 100 Hugs isn't traditionally a colouring book. Chris Riddle curated it just as a book, but I do colour in it, and this is paperback paper, so any paperback book that you get to read will have this sort of paper in, and obviously it's not intended for colouring pencils, so it's not the best paper. However, I find that Prismacolors work best in these. I've always just stuck with them. I don't know why really. I think it's because they're quite waxy, you can build up layers a bit more, and also the colours are more vibrant. If you're pushing down harder with oil pencils, then it might damage the paper. So softer pencils I think are better for thinner paper like this, and that's what I've always kind of stuck to with these books. So I thought that was a good one to just mention because although these books aren't as common, this is a type of paper that I do use when colouring. Okay, so the next paper is from the Ink House by Rory Dobner. Now this paper is absolutely lovely. It hasn't got much of a tooth, and for that reason I like to use my Faber-Castell pencils. So all of the different varieties that I have, so the polychromos that I do have, I don't have the full set, but the ones that I do have, I like to use my Faber-Castell Classics and Ecos, which are budget friendly, and a few Prismacolors here and there, but I would say predominantly it's Faber-Castell pencils. And I've always just stuck with them on this. The paper, again, in here isn't intended as a colouring book, but many people colour in this book. And yeah, I just really like using oil pencils. I find they work really well. I can still build up sufficient layers, and I never have a problem with them. So with smooth paper like this, I tend to go for oil pencils. And yeah, that's what I really enjoy using in this book. Just as a side note, I won't be showing every single book. I'm just kind of showing, to me, like more common types of papers. So this one is a less common one. This is Botanical Wonderland by Rachel Reinert, and I don't know who publishes this. Let me have a look. It might not even say on here. It says on the back. Okay, so it doesn't. So maybe it was that. So Get Creative 6, an imprint of Mixed Media Resources, New York. So this paper, again, doesn't have much tooth. It does have a bit of a tooth, but it is still quite smooth. And in this book, I use all my pencils. I don't really use oil pencils like the Faber-Castells as much. I tend to go for Prismacolors and Holbein. So this was all Prismacolor. That was a limited colour palette. But then something like this was Prismacolor and Holbein. So same with these. So they're kind of a mix. And then I go over with gel pens and all of that. But mainly I do use wax pencils. And in this book I really like to do limited colour palettes for the most part. And I think the designs are so lovely, and I really want to come back to this soon at some point. Because I haven't coloured in it for a while. I think I did the one I showed you to begin with. This one about 2 months ago, so I need to come back to it. But I had a lot of fun doing it, and Prismacolors do work well. I did blend it and burnish it, and there's a tiny bit of white space left you can't really see, but I do like burnishing with the Prismacolors, and on this paper it works really well. So that's Botanical Wonderland by Rachel Reinert. So the next paper, which I think is common to quite a few of us, is the paper in Rita Berman's books. So this is Mein Spaziergang durch die Jahreszeiten by Rita Berman, and the publisher, I am going to butcher this, Bastei Loop. So this, I believe, is FSC paper as well. Let me have a look. Yeah, here we go. So what that means is that it has been sourced, it's a recycled paper or something like that. It's really naturally sourced, and yeah, it's really, really good paper. So this is not the thickest paper. Again, it does have some tooth to it. It's still quite smooth. But in this book, I tend to use my Prismacolors and Faber-Castell pencils. So I find that even though one is wax and one is oil pencil predominantly, all pencils have a mixture of both, but there is higher percentages of wax in Prismacolors, for example. So I find that they really work well alongside each other. I know some people just like to use Prismacolors or polychromos or any other type of pencil just on one page, but I'm the sort of person quite a lot, I will just kind of dip into my sets and use whatever colour I want to. So yeah, I tend to stick with those, and I find it works really, really well. And again with these I go over with gel pen and all of that. So really, I think any pencils would be good on this paper. I did this one with Crayola actually, and I do find that they are quite similar to Faber-Castell Classics, which are the budget-friendly pencils. So budget-friendly pencils do work in this book really well. So yeah, this was the second time I used the Crayolas. I actually used them in another page too. This one was a one-off Holbein page that I did actually. This one, so I used Crayola quite a lot in this, on this page as well, which was really fun. So I do use a mixture of all my pencils really in here, but mostly Prismacolors and Faber-Castells. So next is a Maria Trolle book. However, this is the Swedish version, and the Swedish paper is different from both the English and the Dutch paper. So this paper, I don't know about Flora and the other editions that Maria Trolle has. This paper is thin. It's not the thickest, and it's very smooth. Now, I love to use Prismacolors in here. So this was all done with Prismacolor, I believe, apart from a few Faber-Castell pencils. But Prismacolors do work really well, and I would personally go for those. So this ribbon that I did, I know for sure was all Prismacolors, and I'm really sad because I can't remember what I actually what colours I used for that. I really want to recreate it. But yeah, like the robins, for example, were Prismacolor, and they layer really well, but also burnish really well. So this paper is different from the other books, just as a heads up. This I did with Prismacolor, and there is white space on the squirrel. I'm not sure if you can see that. So it doesn't get rid of it completely if you don't burnish it, but it is still lovely paper, just not quite as thick as her other books. But that's Botanicum by Maria Trolle. Now, a very popular paper that many books from Sweden have, or at least the Swedish editions have been translated into Dutch, is these books. Are these books. So we have Schematised by Maria Trolle, which is Nightfall. This is the Dutch edition. We have the Dutch edition of Middernacht Masquerade by Hannah Carlson, and also Droomreis by Maria Trolle. Also the Dutch edition of Tomislav Tomic's the Zemlja Snova and the Villain Sand books. In Dutch, they also have the same paper as these. So the Spruitjesbos book that I have has also been printed in this paper, and he's actually a Croatian artist, but it's in Dutch as well. So this paper is MUS, so it's an MUS publishing, and the paper, guys, is amazing. It's just ridiculously thick. Gorgeous. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to find out. Anywho, so this is MUS publishing, so the paper is amazing, and I think any Dutch colouring book has this paper, don't quote me on that, but all of the Dutch books that I have so far have this paper. So although the Middernacht Masquerade does have a printing error in it, I would still go for the Dutch edition over the Swedish personally, just because of the paper. It's amazing. So this paper is very smooth, and I think it lends itself really well to anything, really. You could use water medium on it. It's very, very thick. But on this page I used Prismacolors and a few polychromos here and there, but basically Prismacolors and Holbein for the background. So this was predominantly wax pencils, and I found they worked really well. I would happily use them more in this book. In Schematised, I've used everything. I've used Prismacolors and Faber-Castell, and let me give you an example. So this one was all done with Faber-Castell pencils. This one has Prismacolor and the Faber-Castell pencils. This one was all Faber-Castell because I was challenging myself just to use them. A newer example of my work, this was all Prismacolor, and this was all Faber-Castell. So what I tend to do with some of these pages is just use one or the other, and sometimes I use both. So again, the paper is exactly the same, and it is amazing. You could easily use water medium in this. It's just superb. And in Droomreis, I actually have a set colour palette for this book. But on the first page here, for example, I use Prismacolors and polychromos, but also my Faber-Castell Classic pencils. So I do use a mixture again on these. I don't think there's a page where I've solely used one or the other. I think I've always mixed them together. I'll just give you a quick flip of all of the ones I've done so far. So this one here, I actually did a base of not wax pastels, chalk pastels, and then went over with pencil. So they work really well too. So I use a mixture of pencils in these books, and they are lovely. This one was all Prismacolor, I think. And yeah, I absolutely love this paper. So if you have any of the Dutch editions of books, chances are it has this paper. Okay, so Another paper that I have is in the Flower Year by Leila Dooley. So this paper is quite strange. It is a lovely thickness. It's not the thickest paper, but it's a good thickness. It does have a lot of tooth, and I tend to use Prismacolors and Faber-Castell pencils. I do use a few Holbeins here and there. I'm actually using Prismacolor and Holbein on the whip that I'm doing at the moment. This one. I'm not using any Faber-Castell pencils, and they're working just fine. I have worked in this book so much, I think that I have found a happy medium of using all of my pencils. The first page that I did in this one was Prismacolor, and then Polychromos and Prismacolor for the background, which is an always colouring tutorial. And yeah, the Prismacolors work really well there. I don't think I used a blender pencil then, but this one, for example, quite interesting mix. I used Holbein for the blue tits and then Crayola for everything else. So, apart from the blues obviously being really vibrant, because I wanted to make the blue tits vibrant, there isn't that much of a difference between the two pencils, honestly. I really like the muted look of the greens from the Crayola range, and yeah, any pencils in here work really well, but I would say I usually go for Prismacolors and Faber-Castell pencils in this. Okay, so there's two papers left. One that is very, very common is Johanna Basford. Now, the thing with Johanna Basford's paper is that the papers are different in the US and the UK editions, so I can't speak for the US editions, but this copy that I have of Ivy and the Ink Butterfly is printed by Virgin, and the paper is amazing in here. I just love it. It's amazing. Again, it's not as thick as the Dutch paper, but it's still pretty thick, and you could definitely use water medium. I use everything in my newer copy especially, but in this old copy I used Prismacolors and Faber-Castells. I didn't have any of my other pencils then, I just used them. So this one, for example, was all Prismacolor, and they do still work well, even without dipping into other sets. I really, really like how they work. You can easily burnish, but you can also layer, and I layered quite a bit for this background, and the paper can take it. So yeah, I just really enjoy this paper. It's just gorgeous. I also use pastels on this paper, and it is quite smooth, but it does have that bit of tooth. So I think that's my favourite sort of paper, with a little bit of tooth, but not so much that I'm layering and layering and layering for ages, because I don't tend to spend that long on a page. I will still take my time with stuff, but I do like burnishing sometimes. So that was my old copy. However, my new copy of Ivy and the Inky Butterfly, I believe, is slightly different. It's still printed by Virgin. However, if I just take you to the the copyright's at the back, I think. Here we go. So, printed and bound in Italy. Now, this is the key thing. This is printed and bound in Italy. My old copy is printed and bound in China. So, the paper in my old copy is slightly thicker, only a tiny bit, and this paper is slightly thinner. But really, they are pretty much exactly the same. I don't have a problem with this one. I think it's equally amazing. And it's got that same sort of tooth. It's still very, very smooth, but it has that bit of tooth. So I'll just show you a few examples that I've done. I happily use fine liners and they don't bleed through, so you'll have no issues with those as long as you're not too heavy-handed. Again, you can layer loads, you can use blender pencils. It's a slight off-white colour as well, which is lovely. I just use all sorts, and I tend on my newer copy here to use everything. Mainly I've used Faber-Castell pencils, Holbeins and Prismacolors. I haven't tried many of my other pencils in great depth yet. On the page I'm working on at the moment, this is just Holbein for the background, and it burnishes really well. So yeah, that is what I like to use in my Johanna Basford books. And finally we have the Clara Markova paper. Now, I love this paper. I know some people have had issues with layering with this paper because it is very smooth, but I personally really enjoy it and don't have a problem with it really. I do prefer to use waxy pencils, so Prismacolors and Holbeins, but for things like fur, like this one, I do like using polychromos and things. So I use polychromos and a few Holbein for the fur. I use Holbein for all of the birds and Prismacolor for the background. So I have used a mix again on this page, and I do really mix a lot. This one was mainly Prismacolor and Holbein because that's just what I thought worked best. If you're going for a more vibrant look, I'd say they work better, but equally, so for this background, for lots of this in fact, I used oil pencils, apart from a few things, but pretty much all of it was oil pencils, and the background still came out really smooth. So there are lots of pencils that you can use in this, but yeah, I think that it's really good paper. So sorry if you can hear my dad, but yeah, I really like this paper, and it is smooth, but you can work with it. So that's everything I've got to show you. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I had so much fun doing it, and thank you so much to Corby123 for suggesting the video. I have more suggested videos that I hope to get to at some point, but as always, if you have any suggestions, please leave them below. If you have any comments, please leave them below, and if you'd like to get in touch with me about any queries that you have, all the links and things are in the description box of this video. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful day, and I will see you in my next video. Bye everyone.